Welcome back to Echo Ridge, where today it's gonna be a little bit of a different sort of video because, well, I recorded the entire last episode without audio. Yes, I've truly reached the pinnacle of professional content creation. And as you can tell, there's some weird things going on in the colony. So I have to give you an update before I can record another Let's Play, so this is gonna be more of an update video than necessarily a Let's Play. First, and one of the reasons I'm most upset about the audio snafu, is the fact that we hired 4 new duplicants. And one of my favorite things about hiring new duplicants is recognizing the Patreon and YouTube members they're named after. So, let's go through that real quick. First is Daox. Daox, of course, has ranching because every duplicant on this colony has to have ranching or farming, but they also have digging and researching. Their only negative is they're a bit squeamish, which isn't too big of a deal. But because we've brought Daox onto the colony, we can now skill scrub Sulfur because, well, Sulfur doesn't love to do researching. In the end, I decided to wait a little while, and that way we could get a good jump on the research by having 2 researchers on. But eventually, Sulfur is going to be skill scrubbed, and Daox will be the primary researcher for the colony. Speaking of which, it's time to give them their farming hat. Next up was duplicant number 10, Gabby Gabs. Gabby has farming, but also cooking and researching as well. They have an iron gut, they're a shabby dresser, a little uncultured, and their only true negative is that they're biohazardous. But Gabby gives us the ability to have yet another researcher, all the meanwhile doing some cooking and some farming in the background. And the good thing about the cooking and researching combination is eventually you're pretty much done with researching on your colony. Well, in Gabby's case, they'll be able to do a primary job of grilling as well. So they're a highly versatile dupe. Put you in your hat, Gabby? Next up was Colonel Sanders, who has farming, tidying, and ranching. On top of that, they're green thumb, gourmet, uncultured, and unempathetic. Now in this colony, we're going to have a lot of farmers and ranchers. Colonel Sanders is one of the few that has both. But the great thing about them is the fact that they're going to be able to pick everything up and put it down, plus work those pipes with the plumbing skill. Put them into their farming hat. And then finally was duplicate number 12, Matthew Campbell, who has both supplying and operating in addition to ranching. They also have shriveled taste buds, and they're an unpracticed artist. But Matthew Campbell is going to be an amazing mechatronics engineer. In fact, let me put them in their farming, that way they can get their hat, but they still have 6 skills left, which means they're the colony's 2nd mechatronics engineer, in addition to Sulfur. You might be wondering how all this plays out on the priority screen. Well, the way I've decided to do it is no one is going to be prioritized with nothing but farming and ranching other than the duplicants that only have farming and ranching. In this case, that's Belt-Fed Joe. Everybody else is going to be able to do farming and ranching, but they're going to have other primary duties as well, you know, because the farm has a lot of jobs that need to be done. Also in the colony, we did a lot more exploration. Let me show you a couple of the highlights. First, you may remember that we did find 3 water geysers, which is absolutely amazing. So we've sort of separated them into 2 separate reservoirs, because this saltwater geyser is erupting at 95°C, and these 2 cool salt slush geysers erupt at -10°C. Well, because we're not really into the tech or the point of the colony where we want to do sort of cooling at the geyser level, we just made 2 giant reservoirs so that they share their thermals through these lead metal tiles. Ooh, I was also supposed to fix this once we got all the other liquids out of here. So now I can mop those up and get rid of these metal tiles here. Now, some of you might be wondering, why don't I just use the 2 cool salt slush geysers and their -10° brine to cool the salt water geyser? And there's a few reasons why I don't ever do that in a colony. First is because they're going to have different dormancy cycles. For instance, in this case, we would want to warm this brine up so it could go through a desalinator. Well, if we ever ran out of salt water, or if our tank actually ran out of the thermals to be able to warm this water up, well, then we just wouldn't be able to use this geyser. The same goes for this saltwater geyser that we need to cool. When it activates for 81 cycles, and we start running it through all this somewhat chill brine water, if we were to rely on that process, this brine water would heat up to the point where we wouldn't be wanting to use that water afterwards. because it'd be sitting at 30 or 40 degrees. That's the reason why I like to individually tame each vent or geyser. In this case, I'll be able to tame the cool salt slush geysers together and then tame the saltwater geyser separately. We're not quite there yet, hence the reason we have this sort of joint reservoir system that'll do us for at least a little while. But what's more incredible is, in addition to those 3 geysers, we also have the 2 cool steam vents, and right below them we also found another water source in the form of a cool slush geyser. That brings us up to 6 water sources. And no, we're not done, because we found another one over here in the form of a cool salt slush geyser. That makes 7 water sources on this colony. And that's not including the 3 natural gas geysers that we're going to be able to put through natural gas generators and get polluted water from them as well. So needless to say, we're going to be able to use quite a few of these oil reservoirs that pretty much paint all over this colony. In fact, here's 4 here. Here's the 2 we just showed. 2 more over here on the left side of the base, and another one right here. I think when I initially counted them all, we have 9 oil reservoirs. And we actually have all the water we would need to run all 9 at the same time, which means we have the potential for a 30 kilos per second petroleum boiler. I've never made one that big, but I'm starting to think big farm, big systems. We also found an iron volcano here, and if you remember, we also had one at the top side of the base right here. So we have 2 iron volcanoes, and the star map tells me that we also have a gold volcano, although I haven't quite located it yet. I'm sure it's around here somewhere, but there are so many vents and geysers on here that it's pretty easy that I skip over them sometimes. Oh, that's right, here are the other 3 oil reservoirs. Here it is. The gold volcano is up by the Hermit Gravitas shipping container. So I'm looking forward to taming all 3 of those refined metal sources as well. But the great thing about that is, of the refined metals, if you only have access to 2, iron and gold are what you really need. The iron for the steel, and the gold to make things like oxalite and bleachstone. We also completed a Dreco ranch, and this was a design I was really looking forward to showing you, because I've used it a couple of times now, and I think it has fully earned the Echo stamp of approval. We'll start down here at the bottom and notice that the stable is 9 tiles wide. And that way the auto sweeper can reach all 9 tiles. The stable has 2 separate gases in it, hydrogen on the top and carbon dioxide on the bottom. The carbon dioxide is there so the mealwoods can continue to grow, and that way the Drecos can eat them, which will grant them a greater chance to lay a glossy Dreclet egg. For right now, we're keeping the mealwoods nice and chill using a pair of wheezeworts that are being fed domestically using the phosphorite that the Drecos are giving us when they eat the mealwood. We have the shearing station in here because we want that juicy reed fiber from the backs of the Drecos, and since there's so much hydrogen in here, their backsides grow pretty quickly. We have 3 auto sweepers in here, and that way we can pick up all the eggs that then are dropped off in here. And this area is also sitting in a hydrogen gas atmosphere, and so these Drecos will also be sheared. And while we're not feeding or grooming these Drecos, they'll be able to provide us a lot of plastic and reed fiber in their life cycle before they eventually turn into barbecue. We do have a liquid lock in order to keep all the hydrogen in, and you may opt to actually put a double liquid lock because just like the reason we need to use the wheezeworts in order to keep the mealwood cool, the Drecos are pretty hot. In fact, this Dreco here is already 28 cycles old and is still 41 degrees. This glossy Dreclet up here is only 3 cycles old and is at 43 degrees. We'll eventually provide a cooling system and insulate the bottom of this, and that way we'll be able to keep the mealwood cool without using wheezeworts, which aren't the most efficient or reliable source of cooling. As you can tell by this one mealwood over here that's not currently growing due to body temperature. Now, because we hired those additional dupes, this one spawn here wasn't going to fit the bill because it only provides enough oxygen for 10 duplicants, which, by the way, is now being cooled by 4 wheezeworts, thanks to all the phosphorite being provided by the Drecos. And it does pretty good with the oxygen coming out of the other side around 30 degrees. But because we had more than 10 duplicants that one spawn could provide for, I made another spawn system and couldn't help myself in trying yet another design. Now this one I've used a couple of times before, but it's one of my favorites for small oxygen requirements. And if you remember, I was thinking about sort of having separate dupe living areas, so the dupes taking care of the Drecos would live in this area over here. More on this later. And this would be their power supply, and this would be their oxygen supply. Sort of separate little colonies all around the farm. Now this spawn is 100% self-powered and will provide enough oxygen for 5 duplicants. The reason why it's 5 is because, well, we only have 1 gas pump. We have all the overflow hydrogen going into this tank and then passing on to this hydrogen generator, which is providing power for this grid, which these grids are 100% separate, just like the eventual colonies that we'll put over here, probably one up here, and then one more towards the bottom of the map. Just like other spawns this size and this style, this Atmos sensor is set at around 700 grams, and the bottom one is set at 450. Now this I didn't build in the video that I had originally recorded for this episode. I did this in the background as a sort of trial purpose. And to tell you the truth, the next Let's Play you're going to see, we're going to be getting rid of it. But the long and short of it is, this door only allows in 4 duplicants. These 4 duplicants all live, eat, bathe, and go to the bathroom in this little construct. In this way we could sort of ensure that the only duplicants that were actually allowed inside the Dreco Ranch would be wearing a suit. I normally put suits over here, and I think that's the system I'm going to be going back to, because this little thing just presents too many problems. For instance, when the refrigerator needs to be refilled and these duplicants are still busy. Plus, it just kind of looks ugly. I still like the idea of the duplicants living separately, but I'm not 100% sure this is the system I want to end up with. Also, because we've been ripping through all these biomes, I needed a method to be able to get rid of the slime, so we planted some dust caps. Because remember, this farm is going to grow every single plant and raise every single critter. So we'll eventually have a nice professional mushroom farm, but for now, just to make sure our additional dupes get fed, this will work. So my apologies again for not being able to give you the full Let's Play that this episode deserved, but I at least wanted to give you a quick update before I start recording the next Let's Play, where this time I'm going to make sure that OBS is receiving all of my audio. For those wondering on the technical side, I run 2 profiles, one for streaming that I do over on Twitch, and one for recording content for YouTube. Well, I did a Wavelink software update and made sure to reset all the audio settings on the streaming side, but completely forgot to do it on the other recording profile. That's one mistake I'm not going to let happen again. So with everything you've learned in this small update, let me know in the comments below what you're most excited to see in the future of this colony. I, for one, am really looking forward to 30 kilos of petroleum per second. That's going to be fun. I'm going to cut this video short, that way I can get to recording the next Let's Play and hopefully get that out this week as well. So until next time, much love, happy gaming, and I'll talk to you soon.